RugbyRenegade.com, the #1 online strength and conditioning program for rugby. Are you ready to get bigger, stronger, fitter, and faster and dominate your opposition? Welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast, where we build machines.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Rugby Renegade Podcast. My name's Jamie Bain and today I'm interviewing Ashley Jones, Head of Strength and Conditioning at Edinburgh Rugby. Ashley is, as S&C coaches in rugby go, he's probably one of the most experienced coaches going. He's worked with some awesome clubs, he's worked internationally, so he's worked with the top players and the top coaches in both hemispheres, from Australia, New Zealand, Crusaders. He's worked in Japan, and of course now he's up in Scotland with Edinburgh, and he was involved with Scotland during the World Cup. So really humble guy and really open to share his knowledge with us today. So have a listen, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. Hi Ashley, welcome to the Rugby Renegade Podcast.
Thanks very much, Jamie. It's a great pleasure to be here after listening to Ed Cosner speak a couple of weeks ago. It's great that you were able to contact me and have a chat.
Oh, brilliant. It's great to have you on. Ashley, as an S&C coach, your rugby CV is pretty well endowed with, excellent clubs and, different international teams. Why don't we start by sort of telling us where you've worked and what successes you've had?
Yeah, I guess I worked in basketball and rugby league in Australia before I had the opportunity to work in rugby, and it's one of those situations where I was extremely fortunate to interview for a position at the Crusaders in 2003, and was accepted into their organisation starting with their ITN Cup, then NPC team in 2003, and then rolled into the Crusaders in 2004. So I guess if as an S&C coach, you're a product of the playing staff that you have to work with, and when you had probably the two greatest players in their respective positions, with Dan Carter and Richie McCaw in that team for 8 years, which I was fortunate enough to work with, my resume is going to be pretty solid because of those guys and the support players around them. So I'm very, very fortunate to have been in the right place at the right time and to have that as a kickstart to my rugby career. And then from that, rolling into various positions throughout the world of rugby to now find myself in the beautiful city of Edinburgh. So it's been, 2003 to 13 years in professional rugby. So it's been a wonderful journey so far.
Yeah, and we appreciate you, taking the time to sort of share some of that experience with us. Ash,
not a problem.
I saw you speak at the UKSC SCA conference in the summer, and one of the big things you tried to get across was you were discussing the balance of art and science in your coaching and kind of how that's changed throughout your years. Could you sort of expand a bit on that?
Sure. I think I was probably most strength and conditioning coaches that come fresh out of a tertiary education program, although in my generation, it was physical education, teaching or nothing. So obviously today there's a plethora of different sports science courses that people can use. But I would have said I was probably 80+% science, and I just lacked the basic practical programming knowledge and information to be anything more than that. But the first year I worked in professional rugby league with the Newcastle Knights in Australia was probably my steepest learning curve that I've ever been involved with, and to see what actually worked on a day-to-day basis, and then to have science underpin everything I did, obviously, but then to become more and more experiential in the process, and to develop a system of training which worked with that particular group of individuals. And fortunately, similar concepts have been able to transfer from rugby league into rugby, and my programming's evolved somewhat, but I would say now that it's probably at the opposite end of the scale, which is probably 80+% practical, experiential, learned concepts to about 20% of science-based rationales.
Yeah, and because I think obviously the trend is for more and more science and more technology to, become at our disposal. But I think one of the things that came across from your talk was how important, although that is important, how more important it is the communication with the players. So just wondering.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
So I think the most important thing with that is the fact that that's the biggest thing I've seen in my career is the transference of importance onto more of the analytics and the biometrics and other factors involved with GPS and monitoring other areas. But again, I still really hark back to the situation that if you still need to have that coach's educated, experiential eye to interpret that data and just not blindly follow what the biometrics tell you, but to sit down and talk to the athletes and to ensure that you include them in the process of what you're trying to achieve by the use of that particular technology. And technology is wonderful, don't get me wrong, and I've sort of chased my tail a wee bit to getting as much information as I possibly can to ask somewhat educated questions of the GPS people and sports scientists that we have on board at Edinburgh in Scotland. But to actually talk to the player about simplifying information to ensure that they understand what's going on too. And the more you share with the group of people that are doing the business for you each and every day, then the greater success you're going to have in the program.
Yeah, definitely. And part of that communication is, find out what the player needs at that time. And having read a lot of your stuff, I think you're really good at kind of picking what the player needs to work on and sort of how you group that with, individuals in the team. But how do you kind of go about that process of deciding what each individual needs to do? Is it heavily reliant on what the coaches want? Is it based on testing data or just positionally what you feel they need?
I think it's a combination of all those factors. I think it's if you leave one of those people or areas out of the equation, then you're missing a link that could prove to be extremely beneficial for the players' long-term development and hence obviously the success of the team. But I have a philosophy that I want to sit down and discuss what the player needs with the player first and foremost. And in the past, particularly with the Crusaders, I would probably be every Monday, the beginning of the week for the training week, I would sit down with probably a group of 10 individuals over the course of that 2 or 3 hour block in the morning when the rest of the squad's doing. They'd come in and out and I'd have a probably 10 or 15 minute chat to each of those players. So it would take me a month to get through the entire squad of 40 plus. I'm going to reinstitute that with Edinburgh next season so that I get a little bit more fine tuned from where we were this year. But it takes that small amount of time to say, well, what do you feel you need? What's lacking in your game? Some of the questions I ask is, well, who is the best player in your position in World Rugby? If the player states that he is the best position in World Rugby, say, well, what do you need to keep you in that position? Often or not, they're not going to be the best person in that position. So what does so-and-so do differently, or how's their game different to yours, and how can we move you towards that? And obviously there's maybe some physical limitations that we can't change and those aspects, but we can improve, say, acceleration, and the person might be not up to par as far as low body strength for whatever reason. And then we basically formulate that player's individual week plan inside the team week plan. So more or less like a university timetable. So you've got sort of lectures that are compulsory, it's like all the rugby related information, but everything else then becomes more like a tutorial where you fit into the program where you need to fit in. So it puts a lot more work on the strength and conditioning staff, and I'm fortunate I have some exceptionally good strength and conditioning staff with me, and Mark Keys, my number 2, and Jack Walsh, my number 3. And they are just fantastic to work with. And we are really evolving into an effective strength and conditioning team, which is why I want to be around Edinburgh for at least the next couple of years to come anyway. But that goes on to one step further in that I believe in a technique of quadrant management, which I picked up from some business-related journal years ago, in that you've probably seen it. It's just a box with 4 areas. And the first area is for a minimal training age individual who basically doesn't really know their own body yet, let alone what they need to be doing. So there's no discussion involved. I'm going to tell you what program you're doing. I'm going to tell you what sets and reps you're doing, and basically you earn the right over a period of time to progress to quadrant number 2, which is we'll discuss a few things now, give you a little bit more information, and you'll feed back into me, but I'll still make the decisions based around your program. and then that'll move into 3 over time, which I think most rugby players are more or less at. But we'll discuss, we'll input from both sides, and then you make the decision as what you feel the necessity is to do, and then I'll support that or modify it or give you some ideas around that. And the level 4, which is probably the trickiest of the lot, because you don't want to move someone to level 4 too early, because it's basically no need for any discussion anymore. You basically run your program, and I'm here as a facilitator to fine-tune a few edges. And I probably have a couple of players in my squad, guys that are towards the end of their careers, and they actually want to be strength and conditioning coaches themselves when they've finished their playing career. So they fit nicely into a quadrant 4, but they still often like to be told and given ideas of what to do. So they sort of, it's a fluid environment when you get to that level between probably level 3 and level 4 quadrant management.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of doing it. And like, I've had experience working with players who've had, 19, they've done 19 pre-seasons in their career. And, I'd be pretty arrogant to think that I know better than them how, what they need to do to get ready for rugby, So I think that's a really good way.
Well, they're your most important resource. So if you're not using your most important resource, then you're going to come up short at some stage.
Yeah, definitely. So actually, I'd like to talk a little bit about conditioning. There's a lot of different methods used by different clubs and different coaches to improve conditioning. Now, say you've got an athlete who you've deemed needs to get just more aerobically fit, for instance. What do you feel would be the best or the best approach for that?
Well, that's a huge area. I guess my role between the 3 S&C coaches that we have at Edinburgh, I tend to be more towards rugby integration and more the conditioning side of things. Mark Keys is a sensational strength coach, so he tends to focus more on that. And Jack Walsh is more involved in speed and the sports science GPS aspect. So the 3 of us integrate quite well together. So I guess we'd have a chat initially as a group, and the programming would be coming back to me. So depending on the position of the individual, I am very big on utilising weight room circuits. I think the Beastly circuit with the 6 exercises, big compound exercises performed with exactly the same weight from the first rep to the last rep of the 6th exercise, so 36 reps in total, and then straight onto a watt bike and riding 2Ks on the watt bike as hard as you can, and rotating through that 6 times is an extremely effective conditioning tool to use within the weight room. Plus, from talking to players, it simulates a lot of the feelings that players are in the middle of maybe 19 consecutive phases, and how they're feeling towards that blowout stage there. So we'd utilise that with certain individuals. More, say, outside backs where we need to get them up to speed would be repeat speed activities like 40s, 50s, 60s, even up to 80s on a turnaround. We might do 10 50s going every 30 seconds with a jog through from at the 50-metre mark to the far end of the field and turn around to the goal line and go again. In off-season, again, if they're maybe a tight forward, I'm a huge fan of fartlek conditioning. I know that's a wee bit old school, but it still, to me, gives you the variation, paces, intensity, and unfortunately I'm yet to find a golf course here in Scotland that would allow me to do a fartlek conditioning session on it. But if you can get access to a golf course, I think one of the best forms is to, after just a general, say, 5-minute jog pace warm-up to get yourself moving, to above jog pace for the par 5s, stride pace up for the par 4s, and sprint the par 3s. You can get an unbelievably good conditioning session over about 6 to 8 Ks with variation in incline and decline over the course of that. So to me, that's another fantastic conditioning tool that you can utilise for a particular, maybe a forward position rather than, say, an outside back or something. Or you can even do elements. So I did a metabolic agility session with one of my hookers yesterday, who's not in our game squad today. And it was utilising a short ladder and then a sprint out to a coloured cone in an arc. So they basically maybe do a Nicky shuffle through the 5-metre ladder, the 2-metre ladder, and then I'd give them a colour, and they'd adjust to that and sprint out to that cone and jog back, and then we'd do 45 seconds worth of work, and basically have a 1 to 2 work rest ratio. And we were both, I've used a few times, but he's quite a fit individual, and he was basically more or less fried at the end of that. So it's an interesting way to add a wee bit of agility and agility under fatigue conditions, and also the metabolic factors. Nick Lumley, who's our sevens coach here at Scotland Sevens, has introduced some really fantastic drills on that 45-second clock with down and ups every 5 metres. So out and 5 down, back 5 down, continuing on until you complete almost about 150 metres in 45 seconds, and then giving a 3 1/4 minute rest period, 3 minutes 15 rest period, and then going again and maybe doing 6 sets of that. We can do the same on the watt bike with a 45-second blast, as fast as and hard as you can go for 45 seconds, then have 3 minutes 15 off. Or one thing we've added to that is a 45-second watt blast, and you're trying to aim for about 750 metres in that 45 seconds, and then immediately get off and walk wobbly across to the bench press and do a set of 10 dumbbell bench press superset with dumbbell row, and do 2 rotations of the upper body blast, and then by that time you're ready to go again on the 4-minute rolling clock. So all those little things, again, trying to match the individual, the position, the requirements to the available work that we have, and again, using their input to give us some idea of what they feel they want, and then trialing things and working from there.
That's great. There's some great ideas there, and it always makes me laugh when you tell a rugby player, "Oh, you've got 3.5 or 4 minutes rest," and they think, "Oh, it just sounds easy then." And then when they actually do it, they realise that the lactic's sort of horrible.
Yes.
You've obviously, I mean, you just easily reeled off, loads of different methods there. And I've read a lot of your stuff on the actual strength training and explosive training side of things. Mm-hmm. And you've obviously got a hell of a training toolbox. Just wondering how you kind of, do you have a system, do you have it all written down somewhere, or is it all just in your head?
In my head, that's a fairly scary place to go. I think it's a combination. I guess I've been fortunate to be given a writing position with Elite FTS as a columnist. So I guess a lot of that's sort of archived up on there. So I've always got that to come back to. And also before that, I wrote for getstrength.com in New Zealand, and they've got archives of the stuff I've done there for years. So I guess it's written down in a lot of places. Obviously, I have hard drives and USBs floating around the place that have got all that material on it, but sometimes it's often easy for me to, if I've forgotten something, to actually go back to one of those archive sites and to see what I've actually written, and try and sort of not necessarily reinvent it, but maybe modernise it for the group of people I have. And I guess it's everything. When you're doing something day to day, it's in the forefront of your mind most of the times that you're actually just relaxing. And I find that when I'm training myself, that I always have a notebook with me, so that I get moments of clarity when I'm in the middle of a set of whatever I'm doing, and I just jot down ideas down quickly so I don't forget them when I finish my workout. And often build articles and programs based on snippets that come into my head during the course of a workout, and I think that's a fairly useful tool to keep you thinking and keep you modern. That you're training on programs that you want the players themselves to use, and if I can get through a program, not necessarily obviously at the same intensity and loads and things like that, but I still want to be able to be in the weight room and testing things out, even at my age of 55 now, to be able to continue to do things and never stop doing them, never stop learning it.
Yeah, I think that having the notepad on you is a great idea, because I always, whenever I do a good session, I think, oh, that's really good, and I'll write that down so I remember it, have it in the bank. Mm-hmm. And then, something comes up and you don't, and you just completely forget it.
Exactly.
I'll definitely try and push to keep doing that. Actually, this is a question we ask all our guests, and it could be a big one, but it's, what do you think is the biggest mistake that you see rugby players make when it comes to strength and conditioning?
I still think it's aesthetic training for the sake of looking good, rather than performance training to improve what they do in their game itself. And I mean, I've even had that from some of the highest profile rugby players in World Rugby that they want to concentrate on doing exercises at times that that just has no point with rugby. So I guess it's trying to find a fine line and we used to have like a finishing board where we'd have, well, you've got to get all the stuff that I need you to do first and foremost done, and then if you've got some time left in the session, sure thing, jump on the finishing exercises, and we can actually maybe tailor something for you there. But I think it's reliance too much on hypertrophy-based activities. I'm a huge believer in the fact that if you train for strength, size will come rather than the other way around. And I will do some extra upper body hypertrophy work for certain individuals, particularly underweight individuals for positions, so that can be a benefit. But after a player's more or less reached their ideal weight for position and ideas like that, I think it's more important to look at aspects of strength. And in our environment, we have a list of our core exercises and what we feel a player, based on our own experiences and also looking at the numbers of the players over the years, should be able to achieve as an ultimate. Not that you want to stop working towards strength, but in some situations it's much better to looking at the rate of force development rather than the total force development, and ensure that people are explosive and powerful as well as strong and appropriately sized. And we have a flow chart that determines areas where we want players to actually work, which I'm going to talk about at the upcoming NSCA conference in New Orleans in July. So, and I'll basically have an article out in the not too distant future after that, is sort of detailing that. So, something to watch out for in the months ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ash. Now, kind of a bit more sort of philosophical. You've worked in both hemispheres of rugby now. What sort of differences do you see, whether it's in athletes or how we do S&C in the different hemispheres?
I was shocked when I first walked into the Edinburgh, Scotland weight room and looked at the records boards that were on either end, for one for Scotland, one for Edinburgh. And the strength levels of the players it blew me away. It was far higher than the averages that I'd ever worked with in the Southern Hemisphere before. But I think that comes at a cost in the fact that they often don't move as well because they're focusing primarily on fixed range activities. Like they want to try and get their squat to 300 kilos where they're already existing at 270 kilos, or double body weight or 2.5 times body weight when ideally you don't want to be pushing for triple body weight, even though I guess what Mike Stone would say that strength is never a liability. But I think in movement-related sports, particularly rugby, you need to be able to exert that force quickly. So that's one of the biggest things I found, the difference between the South and the North, that we would spend a lot more time looking at rate of force development activities and working off the force velocity curve in our programming, rather than having strength dominate across the board. And the other aspect is the skill work that would be done in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, with Edinburgh, now we're combining a lot more skill activities within the weight room. So players will execute a certain number of passes with our skills coach and then come back in and squat and clean or whatever their major exercise is for that particular day. So trying to get more and more skill work into the players at different stages of the day, I think there's been a big step forward with our program this year. But not a lot of skill work that I saw, particularly in an S&C sense with warming up before the rugby sessions. There was not a lot of S&C combination with rugby drills and to formulate a good transition from the pure S&C to the rugby environment. So I think that's an aspect that S&C coaches need really to work hard on, is to spend time with the position coaches and talk more and more detail about, well, I need to achieve this in my warm-up, you need to achieve that. How can we bring the two together and formulate some sort of conditioning game or a skill drill? And then I can look at monitoring the time in play type activities and to get the best best of both worlds out. So I think that's what I've sort of noticed more and more so. And some phenomenal athletes in the Northern Hemisphere. And I guess in the past, sitting back south, it was almost like, well, it's more an environmental factor, but obviously Southern Hemisphere grounds are harder. We play a lot more in the summer months, and people play above the ground, whereas Northern Hemisphere, with the weather conditions not ideal at a lot of times, and playing through the winter months, you tend to play into the ground. So it takes that whole speed and power aspect a lot out of the scenario. So I guess that's probably the biggest difference with the use of training techniques to match the environmental conditions, and then looking to what sort of, whether it's expansive type of rugby you want to play or more 10-man forward dominant rugby, and obviously the conditions and the playing staff that you have will dominate that aspect as well.
Yeah. Ashley, just lastly, just to finish up, where can people sort of learn more about you? I know you said you're a columnist at Elite FTS, and you've written in the past at Get Strength, and I assume there's more coming out at Elite FTS?
Yeah, I think I've got about 3 or 4 in print at the moment, in progress. So I think I'm up till about July as far as my deadlines are concerned. As I said earlier, with the gym, I can often get a sort of fragment of an article that comes to me in the middle of a set, write it down, and then I'll try and flesh that article out into 1,000, 1,500 words. But the people at Elite FTS have done a wonderful job as far as just sort of combining my scratchings into an article which reads relatively well. And the way they set it out, it sort of makes it look a hell of a lot better than it probably is. But they've done a great job, and really happy to be associated with them. EliteFTS.com.net, is the first one I'd go to. Is wanted to read anything that I've written lately. GetStrength.com, based in New Zealand. Stuff that I've written since the early part of the and UKCA, that is a article coming out shortly. I think it was a video I did post the UKCA in the summer, and NSCA coming up in July. So happy to answer any questions from people if they send an email through ashley.jones@edinburghrugby.org. If it's a quick and easy question, you usually get a quick and easy answer coming fired back to you. But if it takes a little bit more time, it could take a couple more days or something like that. But I will always answer anyone who takes the time to actually ask a question.
That's brilliant, Ashley. Thanks very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I'm sure our listeners will have benefited hugely from your experience.
Thanks very much, Jamie. It's a great pleasure and honour to be interviewed by someone working in the field and day-to-day in the trenches as well. So all the best to you.
Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate that. Wow, that really was a great interview. Loads of great information for anyone who wants to get fitter, faster and stronger for rugby. Key take-homes for me. Firstly, just some of the conditioning sessions that Ashley mentioned. I hope you guys are making notes, jotted them down, give them a go and let us know how you get on with them. And then also where he said that, a lot of players just get a bit vain really and try and train just to kind of look good naked. Obviously some of that is needed, but it's more about increasing your rate of force development and improving things that will carry over to your rugby performance, and that's what it's all about. So thanks, Ashley, for that great interview, and of course we got more interviews to come, more podcasts to come, and if you've got any questions you want us to ask the experts, just let us know, and we'll get them fielded to them. Check us out at www.rugbyrenegade.com and Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And then, of course, subscribe to us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn or iTunes, whichever floats your boat. Subscribe and give us a good review, and we'll keep these coming. Thanks. Till next time.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Renegade Podcast. For more quality rugby strength and conditioning information, check us out at rugbyrenegade.com. Rugby Renegade, building machines.